The UK Parliament will be suspended just days after MPs return to work next week. The Queen has approved the plan set forth by Prime Minister Boris Johnson that will shut Parliament for nearly 5 weeks from mid-September until October the 14th. Opposition has come from across political lines, most importantly from within his own party in the form of Scottish Conservative leader Ruth Davidson, who's reportedly ready to step down. The suspension will limit the amount of parliamentary time available to MPs who want to try and prevent Mr Johnson from pulling the UK out of the EU without a deal on October the 31st. But Prime Minister Johnson says his measure will not prevent MPs from having enough time to debate the next move on Brexit, although the opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn says it's a damaging threat to democracy.
I've protested in the strongest possible terms on behalf of my party, and I believe all the other opposition parties are going to join in with this, in simply saying that suspending Parliament is not acceptable, it's not on. What the Prime Minister is doing is a sort of smash and grab on our democracy in order to force through a no-deal exit from the European Union. What's he so afraid of that he needs to suspend Parliament to prevent Parliament discussing these matters?
Well, for more on this story, let's speak to our UK correspondent Vincent McAvenny in London. Vincent, we're starting to see the fallout from this now, with the Scottish Conservative Party leader Ruth Davidson reportedly set to quit. How big a blow is this for Boris Johnson?
Good evening, Tokes. Well, there's been huge fallout all day from this decision by Boris Johnson. There's actually been hundreds of people gathering here in Westminster. They've just started marching off down around Parliament, and they're going to block the roads down there. But I think the reaction tonight that Boris Johnson will be really worried about is that of Ruth Davidson. She is the Scottish Conservative Party leader. She's held that post for 8 years, and she's seen as one of the best campaigners the Conservative Party has, not just in Scotland, but around the rest of the country. She did very well in the 2014 referendum on independence, and she has led the party from real oblivion in Scotland right the way back into strength. They are now a big party in the Scottish Parliament, and they are also back here in Westminster. They have Conservative Scottish MPs, and that is widely seen as her doing. But we understand that she will make a statement on Thursday in which she might stand down, and this, they say, is because of both personal and professional reasons. She did become a mother in October last year. She's had this job for 8 years now, a long time in frontline politics, but also she is at loggerheads with Boris Johnson, it's thought, on the issue of Brexit. When Boris Johnson went about his tour of the UK when he first was in position, he had meetings with Ruth Davidson in Scotland, and she told him that pursuing a no-deal Brexit wouldn't be something she'd get on board with. It would be disastrous in Scotland, which is threatening, of course, with the SNP leadership to have another referendum on independence. And the Conservatives up in the north of the border think that a no-deal Brexit would really put them into decline.
Vincent, on Tuesday we saw those opposition parties coming together to put forward their policies and proposals for a no-confidence vote, trying to stop a no-deal Brexit, of course. Insiders, people close to the corridors of power, how do they judge Boris Johnson's strategy right now?
Yeah, there was near unanimity today in the statements from the opposition leaders. They all said it was outrageous and that it was anti-democratic. And of course, we saw earlier in the week that they'd signed a declaration to try and block no-deal Brexit. They're all now working behind the scenes here at Westminster, desperately trying to build a majority to beat the Prime Minister next week in a vote of confidence in the House of Commons, which will likely happen on Tuesday or Wednesday. It's going to be very dramatic scenes. But there are those who say that strategically Boris Johnson has played a bit of a blinder, because if he is setting up for a general election, which many people think he is, and it's going to be the people versus politicians, which is something that we've heard from his team, then if he does lose that vote of no confidence next week and then there is a general election, he can point the blame at those opposition figures. And that's something that former Theresa May advisor Joey Jones thinks that he has now done pretty well.
I think it's decisive, it's clever, it's a bit of constitutional sharp practice, it's stretching precedent and custom without any doubt, but he has caught his opponents on the hoof, wrong-footed them, and I just also think that they are reacting in a way that plays into his hands. They are sounding his opponents a bit hysterical, they're overreacting, they're talking about this as though it's the whole roof is going to fall in on us as a country.
Well, Vincent, if this was an episode perhaps on a downloading series, we'll be eagerly awaiting for the next episode. So what can we expect?
Yeah, it's not going to be Netflix and chill here in Westminster tonight. All of the opposition figures are trying to figure out a way to build that majority that they need next week in order to bring down the government. And that would require a number of Conservative backbench MPs, those previously perhaps in Theresa May's government, the likes of Philip Hammond, those like Ken Clarke, who are strong Europhiles and Remainers, to come together and give them that majority they need to try and bring down the Prime Minister. Because if they don't manage that, and we do head towards this Queen's speech, the time for them to act is going to be very limited. So people here scratching their heads, going through the Constitution, trying to figure out how they do this. And Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, and Joe Swinson, the Lib Dem leader, they're both trying to get their own meetings with Her Majesty the Queen, who has been dragged into this tonight. She won't be able to say anything publicly on this. She can't refuse Boris Johnson. It is her constitutional duty to do this, and it is what all new governments do. But it is being used tactically, and she might feel personally that she's been exploited in this way, so she might not be too happy with her Prime Minister tonight, but we will not be able to know her true feelings on it.
Vincent McAvenny there with the very latest from Westminster. Thank you.